Hello, everyone. Welcome to chapel today. We have such a treat. One of our very own, Ronny, will be leading us in a reflection today. We're so excited to hear from her and thank her for saying yes to us. Ronny is the director of admissions here at United Theological Seminary of the Twin Cities, and many of us have in some way been connected to her. And so what a treat it is to hear her and her thoughts and her story. And without further ado, let me introduce Ronny. Yeah.
Thanks for letting me join you all today. I just want to share a bit about my story growing up as an evangelical Christian and moving out of that community through a process that so many people call deconstruction. Okay, I can talk a little louder. La, la, la. La, la, la. Okay. All right. So getting started, I grew up in a small city in Texas that earnestly, not derisively, called itself the Buckle of the Bible Belt. I now know that many communities have claimed that mantle for themselves, and that many people don't see that as a good thing. But as far as I knew, it was true, and it was an honor. I belonged to a non-denominational evangelical church. I was homeschooled until 6th grade, and then I attended a non-denominational evangelical school from 6th to 12th grade, whose school board members just so happened to all be Southern Baptist. There was no dancing at San Jacinto Christian Academy. Skirts must be 3 inches below the knees, no midriffs. We sometimes had to raise our arms above our heads in class in front of everyone to prove this. No bare shoulders, unless you're cheerleading at the Friday night football games, and then that's out the window. For boys, their dress code was roughly a quarter the length of ours, and much easier to follow when back to school shopping. No hair below the earlobes, no sideburns, shirts tucked in. There were scissors in the front office for those whose parents had been lax in scheduling their next haircut. I could go on with details showing my evangelical credentials, but you can probably guess most of them. All in all, I actually was raised fundy light compared to some of the stories I hear now, from those who were homeschooled at conservative co-ops, women who couldn't wear pants or use birth control, children who couldn't read or watch or listen to anything secular or non-Christian. So what changed for me? How did I go from where I was to where I am now? If 17-year-old me could meet current me, she'd be horrified. I mean, the purple hair alone. I don't take my kids to church. I work at a seminary that is definitely not following biblical truths as I knew them, and I may be personally responsible for leading people astray out of the fold. For people who purported to be raising me as a conservative evangelical Christian, my parents made crucial mistakes by teaching me and my siblings to question authority, read widely, and travel. Whoops. When I decided to go to a liberal arts college in Minnesota, the question to me was, you know it's cold up there, right? And the whispered, frantic message to my parents was, you can't let her go there. It's a slippery slope and she'll fall away from Christ. Well, they were right. When you set up your faith to say that you have the truth and everyone else is wrong, and then you find out that other people are happy and moral and living good, fulfilling lives, this starts to poke holes in the absolute truth that you've been given. Until I was in college, I didn't know that most people thought Catholics were Christians. I didn't know that anyone claimed to be both progressive and Christian. Note this, I'm not just saying that I thought progressive Christians were wrong. I literally didn't know there was anybody claiming to be both. The problem with claiming to have the absolute truth is that when even a little bit of it is disproven or seems overly simplistic or starts to fray around the edge, then yeah, it's a slippery slope. The absolute truth is hard and sharp and hurts people, but it's also brittle and easily broken when it comes up against people with varying viewpoints, living their lives differently. If it's all true or none of it's true, you'd better be damn sure you don't let yourself find out that some small part of it might be false. That's what I think the deconstruction movement in evangelical Christianity really stems from, finding one piece that doesn't quite fit and deciding to re-examine the rest. Unlike converting to evangelical Christianity, there is no one end goal or one predetermined path that deconstruction takes. It can be deconverting from religion entirely, or changing denominations or religions to a small or large degree, or ultimately deciding that what you believed before is pretty much what you believe now, simply examined closely. It can be difficult to leave behind the idea of knowing the truth. I grew up fully believing that the Bible had the answers to everything I could ever need to know, that all of the answers to life's toughest questions were, in fact, knowable. Not only that, but because I knew the truth, I had a responsibility to share it with other people. Are any of you familiar with the reality TV show 19 Kids and Counting, starring the Duggar family? A few. A lot of those kids are adults now, and several of them are going through their own deconstruction process. 2 of them have books published just this year. I have waited years for a Duggar tell-all. I've pre-ordered Jill Duggar's book coming out in September, and we'll have popcorn waiting. I recently read Ginger Duggar's book, Becoming Free Indeed. Although she did leave the specific version of Christianity in which she was raised, she then joined a different fundamentalist evangelical church. A good chunk of the book is about how she rejects the idea of deconstruction, equating it solely with leaving Christianity, and instead says that she disentangled her faith. In the introduction, she talks about seeing old friends who grew up with the same beliefs that she did. She says, I'd find out that some of them no longer loved Jesus and wanted nothing to do with Christianity. As they reached young adulthood, they had rejected everything they'd been taught about God, the Bible, and the Christian faith. This is in contrast to her own path. My faith is still intact, but it has changed. Instead of leaving the faith entirely, I have unthreaded or disentangled the truth of Christianity from the unhealthy version I heard growing up. The truth about Christianity. It's not enough that she left some harmful beliefs behind. She can't say, I used to think I know the truth, now I know it's more complicated. No, she still needs to believe that now she has the answers. And now that she has the answers, she needs to share them with all of us. There's a recent documentary about the Duggar family and Bill Gothard, the teacher they followed, called Shiny Happy People. After watching it, I read a snarky Facebook post that said, I watched Shiny Happy People and thought, wow, how awful. I'm so glad I got out of the toxic fundamentalist church I was raised in. This really happens when you follow an ancient misogynistic book. You watched Shiny Happy People and thought, how awful. I'm so glad my fundamentalist church isn't like that. We follow the Bible for real. Though I didn't grow up in the same belief system that Ginger did, and though I no longer believe many of the things she still believes, I recognize in her language the certainty and the responsibility that I used to have, that truth is knowable and singular, and that once she discovered it, she had a responsibility to share it. Later in her book, she talks about another book she co-wrote about 10 years ago with 3 of her sisters. The book had advice about relationships, dating, or rather courting, and how to have a successful life. She was 20 years old when she wrote that book. Looking back on the book now, she says, I don't see the same roadmap for success today that I saw then. I mostly see a young girl who needed to learn a lot more about God, the Bible, and life before claiming to have answers. She acknowledges that some of the ideas in her book were not only unhelpful, but actively harmful. I felt sad thinking that in another 10 years, she might look back on this book in the same way, a book like her first one, claiming to have answers and to be a roadmap for living a successful life, quoting verse after verse to show the difference between what she was taught as a child and the truth that she now knows, and what those verses mean for people's lives today. When I first fully walked away from evangelicalism, I wanted to go back and evangelize all my friends right out of it too. I wanted to convert people to deconstruction, so to speak. It took me quite a while to realize where this impulse came from. It's the same impulse I had to tell people about Jesus and how to be forgiven in their sins. In both cases, I had the truth and I had to tell everyone else about it. Now, that's not what I want. Instead, I want to do no harm. I want to mutually support and encourage each other to be ourselves, to determine our own beliefs, to examine our own beliefs. I want to be the best version of myself I can be, knowing and being okay with the idea that my understanding of myself will continue to change over time. And now I don't need to tell you that you're wrong or that you need to be doing and believing exactly what I'm doing and believing in order to be right. In fact, I care a whole lot less about being right at all. What a gift, what a freedom to not have to know it all. Thank you. Well, thank you for having me today.
What a treat. Beloved community, please join me in prayer. Gracious and loving one, we are so thankful for this day, and we're thankful for Ronny and her journey. We're thankful for so many that are on a very similar journey. We just want to take a moment and just pause and slow everything down and give thanks and be grateful. Feel the sunshine. You do so much for us, and we're very, very grateful. In your name we pray. Amen. Thank you so much for chapel today. So next week, we're taking a Sabbath. It's reading week. So you're invited to read, you're invited to rest, you're invited to do what you do best. I feel like I'm on the radio a little bit, but that's fine. But take care of yourself, take care of one another, be blessed, be bold, be brave, and be you. Amen and ashe. That's all we got.